showing up to class doesn't mean you get a village. And I think I wish it did, but it takes work and intention.
Welcome to the Be Well Baby podcast. I'm Dr. Emily Spaeth, founder of Be Well Baby in Portland, Oregon, and the Beyond Birth Blueprint, an online community where we support families through pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and especially life with a baby. This podcast exists because I believe families deserve better than what I am seeing in my work as a physical therapist, lactation consultant, and childbirth educator. Just a quick loving note before we dive in. Everything you hear on this podcast is for educational purposes only. It's not medical advice. Every body and every baby and every season is different, and you deserve support that is personalized to you. Let's get started. I'm so glad you're here. What if the most powerful thing you could do for your baby wasn't a product, it wasn't the right schedule, and it definitely wasn't something that you learned on TikTok, but a room full of other moms who get it? Today, I'm sitting down with Liberty Planck. She's the founder of new Mom School in Lake Oswego, Oregon. And honestly, this conversation went places I never expected. Liberty is a mom of three, a former experienced designer who's worked everywhere from venture capital to financial technology to entertainment. And she's someone who has channeled all of the how do I make people feel like they belong energy into building something truly special for families in Oregon. In this episode, we are talking about why isolation is one of the biggest risks to new moms and babies, what actually happens when a clinical expert walks into a room full of postpartum women, and we talk about how to give parents real information without undermining their confidence, and what it really means to build a village, not just show up to one. So whether you're postpartum, you're expecting, you're a provider who works with families, or just someone who cares about how we support mothers in this culture, this one is for you. I also want everyone to know, if you're local and you would like to attend a new Mom School class, they fill up really fast. So during pregnancy is the best time to sign up. And you can use the code BeWell50 to get $50 off your first cohort. Enjoy. Liberty, I know that you have 3 kids of your own, just like me. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if you can kind of walk me through the reason and the experience that you had that made you want to bring new Mom School to Oregon.
Yeah. So I had Nova, my oldest. She's almost 5. I had her during the pandemic. And at the time we were living in San Francisco, and we decided to move up here when she was just a few months old. The pandemic escalated our Oregon plan. We were going to go when she was closer to kindergarten. And I had a lot of friends. I'm originally from Orange County, where New Mom School was created. And I had friends that were going to New Mom School with their babies. And I was so jealous. I was like, why don't we have anything like this here? I moved here. I didn't have any friends. I had family in the area, but they were heavily quarantined due to childcare reasons. So we were extremely isolated. And so I just kept thinking, I actually emailed them like years before saying like, come to Oregon. It would do so well here. People need this kind of community. So I think just from my own lived experience of having a child during an extremely isolating time by nature, and then also in the world, very isolating, I think it really exacerbated the desire. The seed was planted many years before it actually came to fruition.
Yeah. But you didn't work in this space at all before. No. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So my background is really interesting. I would call myself an experienced designer. I have an MBA in design strategy. And so I have spent my whole career across different sectors. So commercial real estate, entertainment, venture capital, and then I worked for Gusto doing employee experience. But the thread that kind of went through it all is I care a lot about the customer, whoever that is. Sometimes it's one person, if it's that I'm working for like a celebrity, or it's a team of employees that are under my purview, or it's millions of people in the world that are using Apple products. And so I think I always am just really thinking about how do I figure out what people are looking for, and how do I help them feel that feeling of belonging and purpose. And so it's a really interesting pivot because I spent my career doing things that are very global. And this is extremely hyper localized, which is like really messes with my brain most days. But just that beautiful visual of the ripple effect where it's like you put a drop of water and then you start to see the impact of that ripple. And I think as a mom of 3 and feeling like I'm in a season where my kids are my priority and they're really little, they're 4, 2.5, and 1. And I needed something that was more mom friendly and that spoke to a higher purpose for me of like, how do I help moms not start out the way I did? How do I give them a foundation from the beginning that they're not even going to know what it could have been like without it, which is like mind blowing to me. So yeah. Yeah,
that's amazing. I think one of the things that's really coming up for me as we talk about this is the responsibility of motherhood and parenthood. It is so much responsibility, and it's so powerful. And if we can slow down, we can make such an impact on just this one little tiny human.
Yeah.
And you're going from this like super fast paced, like optimize everything environment to like, how do I build something that's really local, that speaks to this one dyad, the mother baby dyad, you know, and can provide support to each and every person who comes into New Mom School. So let's back up for a second and talk about what New Mom School is.
Yes. So New Mom School was very thoughtfully designed as education meets support meets community. And so it's postpartum classes for moms and their babies between basically the first day of life all the way up to their first year. And so each of the moms they come with their babies, they sign up for an 8-week series. You get together once a week for 8 weeks. It's the same moms, it's the same instructors. And in the beginning, our newborn class is heavily focused on caring for the mom, which is really unique. Our program is focused on her relationship changing after baby. So we bring in a relationship coach or a marriage and family therapist. We're talking about her postpartum body. We're talking about her transition into motherhood. We're talking about sleep and how to identify and just talk about what's normal with postpartum anxiety and depression. Because I think a lot of times it's good that we have so much information, but sometimes it actually can spiral us and make it worse because we see all these things on the internet or we read all these books and it's kind of like, I don't know, we tend to overdiagnose ourselves because we just don't know otherwise and we're not normalizing the experience with other people. And so that's,
and I think when you're in a room with all these people that's something that I really love about New Mom School is the cohort model, that like all of these moms are going through it with you week over week.
Yep.
And they get to have that moment with you where you found out the really hard news about a diagnosis with you or your baby. And then they also get to see you through it. Yeah. And it's really profound and powerful to have that and to be like, I'm not getting any sleep. And to have every single other person in the room be like, yeah, me neither.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, like, oh, wait, maybe we should text each other at 3 a.m. because we're all awake at 3 a.m. Yeah. And it's awesome too, because I think especially in those the newborn and infant, we also bring in local practitioners to talk about different topics. And so the discussion is really guided. It's not like come in and vent about what's going on, although we do that too, but it's more just like, hey, let's have a focus topic and we can ask any questions around that. And the reason I think that is so valuable, and again, something I wish I had, is it's really hard to find the right providers to solve the problems that you may not even know you need help with until maybe it's way too late or you're dealing with it now when your child's 5, like me. Yeah. And so I feel like the balance of New Mom School loves to say some moms come for community and they get education and some come for education and they get community. And I feel like that's a really beautiful dynamic because you're getting education that is extremely neutral by design. So it's not telling you, hey, this is how you parent. This is the only right way to sleep or not sleep or do whatever. And it's very much like, here's what the data says. And our job is to create a space where you can determine what feels right for you, which is very, I think, unusual when you are giving advice to people in this day and age.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think as a provider, it's also really nice, you know, for listeners, I am one of those experts that comes in and I talk about baby development. And it's really nice to be able to be in an environment where sort of the evidence is supported and it just is the way that it is, and then you get to decide what to do with it. Like we talk about the snoo all the time and swaddling all the time, and those are things that can be so controversial because sleep is so valuable and people want their babies to sleep. And just understanding, you know, why is someone telling you to stop swaddling your baby at 2 months is so valuable when you are just seeing on TikTok that someone says you shouldn't. It's totally different than understanding the reasoning behind it from an expert that's been vetted. And I think that's something that New Mom School does really well.
Thank you. Yeah.
I really love that there's no right way. Like it really just takes the pressure off.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I think, and especially with that, it's really cool to see in the room how, and I feel like just in the day and age that we are today, it's even more valuable that moms can have different opinions and be friends. Yeah. And that, I just got chills just saying it even, it's really hard to exist in this world and feel like, oh, I have to live in this pocket because I have this certain set of opinions about something. And it kind of just takes not only the pressure off the moms, but actually the pressure off of the relationships with each other, where it's like, oh, you're doing this and I'm doing something completely different. And like, both are okay. And I think, you know, even as sleep is such a hot topic, but I feel like one of the things that we always talk about is we feel so much pressure to make baby, like my first was a terrible sleeper, still struggle with sleep with her. And I wish I had known, like, she's a live wire baby. She's all like, her mind is racing. She doesn't sleep. She's not like the 80th percentile in the middle. And so I felt this like, oh, if I don't follow the schedule, then it's my fault that she's not getting the sleep she needs. And so I like did everything I could to get her that sleep, and which, you know, good and bad. But I feel like the advice I give now is, if what you're doing is working for you, then it's okay until it's not working. And then you can change it and it's okay. You're not going to ruin your baby for life.
Yeah. And I think, luckily you have these experts that you can ask if it stops working, you know?
Yep. Exactly.
And I think, what's really beautiful about it is that you can be in this room with all these other babies and be able to see just a handful of what could be typical, you know? So,
totally.
Liberty, I'm really curious, what happens when there is a mom who is struggling with feeding or with recovery? Maybe she had a 4th-degree tear and a prolapse, and the pelvic floor person comes in and is talking about all of these things. Her baby gets a diagnosis of hip dysplasia or torticollis. There's this, like, you often need this clinical expertise, but also permission to do it your way and trust yourself. So I'm curious how you see those two things. Let's use the mom with the prolapse example.
Yep.
How do you see that kind of play out in the session with a pelvic floor PT who comes in?
So I've had this exact example happen. And I think
it's common. I feel like
it's very common.
People don't know that it's common.
Yeah. And then what happens is, so say you go to the OBGYN and you get a diagnosis of prolapse, and then all of a sudden your first instinct is to go on the internet. And so then you go down the rabbit hole, and then you're spiraling all night long because you're like, this is my life forever. I'm never going to be able to run. I'm never going to be able to do all these things that make me feel like who I am. And the nice thing is that we've had situations, like we had one where actually someone got the diagnosis, and then like that next week was the pelvic floor expert. Perfect. Was just the floor from the floor. And I feel like it was so nice to have her say, like, that is super normal. There are so many things that we can do. And like, just to even hear the relief of like, this is not as dire. It doesn't have to be as dire as your nervous system is telling you it is. And so in that situation, I think like a lot of it is, I think one of the topics that's really spicy is around like tongue ties. That's one where we get moms who come in all the time and they're like, someone's telling me that my baby's fine. And then someone else is telling me they have a tongue tie, and like, do I get the procedure? Do I not? And in that situation, so much of it is like, you know your baby best. And yes, these people are experts, and there are pros and cons and costs to weigh for whatever decision you decide. But ultimately, like, you're the one who has to live with that decision. And so like, we'll give you all the research that we can, but then I really want you to sit with yourself and say like, what feels right to me? I don't want you to ever feel forced into something that doesn't resonate with you.
Totally.
Because then it's a decision you'll regret, versus feeling like, oh yeah, I want moms to have confidence in whatever decision they're making.
I know. I feel like with that decision, especially, it's this moment of like, if I go down the path of I'm doing this, am I going to sit back, look back and think, why did I do this? Or if I go down the path, I'm not doing this, am I going to look back and be like, what would have happened if I had?
Yeah.
And so you just have to decide. And ultimately with procedures like that and pursuing treatment for various things, it has to be something that you believe in for it to work.
Yeah. And I also think sometimes getting a second opinion, like I think giving people permission to say, like, I think there's a sentiment, I see this all the time where we hear, oh, someone is an expert, and so therefore what they say is the only truth. Right. And it's not to say that people are not experts and that they don't have their 10,000 hours, but people approach things differently. Like I dealt with this on my own, where I've had probably 4 different people look at my daughter's tongue tie, and some say it's totally fine. And other people are like, that's the most obvious tongue tie I've ever seen. And at that point, it's like, I respect all of these people. And so ultimately, how do you make the decision besides say like, okay, I'm taking all that in and I'm going like, what in my soul feels right for me? And also not, I think it puts too much pressure on clinicians that like they are the only keepers of the knowledge. And, you know, so many of them have seen so many different things. Like I think about this with pediatricians all the time. There's so many times where I wish they would just say, let me refer you to a specialist on feeding, on tummy time and infant development. Like, and I think sometimes they feel the pressure to have all the answers. And like, that actually isn't their job, but we expect it to be their job. We expect that from them. So
yeah, that's absolutely true. That's a whole other podcast episode, I think, right there. I just wanted to pop in here and say that if the Be Well Baby podcast has helped you in any way, if our team has helped you in any way, the people who find us because they heard about us from a friend, because they heard about us from a midwife or a doula or their pediatrician or their OB. And we value those connections so much. And we know that the only way for people to find excellent healthcare is for people to talk about it. So if you have a minute, please leave the podcast a review. It will help people find this podcast. If we band together and shout this from the rooftops, then we will be able to change healthcare. Thanks. So we've kind of talked about, and I actually recently had this experience where about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I had just a friend who happened to be working with someone. Essentially, her client said, well, about 4 years ago, I had a baby and the doctor said I'd never be able to run again because I have a grade 2 prolapse. And she's not a clinician. She was like, that just doesn't sound right to me. Why don't you talk to my friend Emily, who does pelvic floor, and see? And you know, I talked to her, got a good history, and I was like, there's no reason that you can't try. There's no reason. And her just hearing that was the first step in a year and a half long journey. And now she runs 3 times a week and she's delighted, you know?
Yeah.
So I think just being connected, and that's what New Mom School does. It really connects you to other people having experiences, to other people, other experts in the community. Yeah. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
I also tend to see kind of the cost of isolation in my work, because sometimes babies don't get referred to me by the pediatrician until 6 months, when really they needed a week 1 of life referral. I really see like the things that are falling through the cracks, like the flat head that gets unnoticed, or recently it's been an ear that could have been reshaped by an ENT, but it has to be done within the first 21 days of life. And the pediatricians just miss it. Yeah. They miss the window. Or the umbilical hernia that that kind of gets told it'll just get better. And I'm curious, do you see that too, even just as a facilitator in a room full of moms?
Definitely. I think that's one of the things that it's sometimes really challenging, because a lot of times moms are coming in, and sometimes maybe in class they're hearing something for the first time when they expected, oh, if this was something that I needed to address, how come I haven't heard it before? And that is a challenge that we have. And I think part of it is because the experts that we bring in, they're not generalists. They are hyper specialized in this exact phase. And so they see thousands of babies and moms in this exact season. And so I think, but you have to be so delicate too, because they're in that postpartum season. They are more sensitive. They immediately think, like, I know this from my own experience of being a patient with a baby who had a head turn preference, and like the relief I felt when the practitioner told me it's not your fault. Like, I immediately assume, as moms, we all do, like, we did something wrong and that's why our baby is suffering. And so many times, just even like the knowledge, hey, by the way, think about it, when your baby's in the womb, they're in a particular position and like the fascia grows that way. And just all of that, I feel like we don't learn about that on the internet. We don't learn about that in childbirth prep. Like, there's so many gaps that if we can catch those things earlier on when babies are really little, you don't have to wait and see. You actually can be proactive and do something about it if you want to.
Totally. And, you know, I find myself obviously walking into people's homes as the expert there for a very specific reason, to probably give you news you don't want to hear. But I don't want to undermine anyone's confidence. And it's a fine line.
It is.
So I'm curious, as a facilitator in these rooms, because I know you have other facilitators, but you are also a facilitator of these groups. What do you think about that line? What advice would you give clinicians who really are trying to, and like pediatricians, anyone listening to this, who are really trying to give their clients and their patients the very best information and not water things down for them, really tell them how it is, but also allow them to continue feeling like competent parents.
Yeah. So the very tricky part about this is, I think this goes back to my experience design and like just how I'm having to be very hyper aware of the demeanors of each of the moms. And the same, I think, when you have patients, like, you can tell if a mom is like, give it to me straight. And if a mom is not that way, I wouldn't give it to her straight. And so I think that's where it takes that extra layer of nuance to kind of, whether it's like asking some questions, like, is there anything that you're nervous about? Or how can I help you? Because I think that's part of it. Even, I know we've talked about this, like a great way to empower moms to notice that their child might have a head turn preference instead of telling them that they have one is, hey, it's a really good way to check it is open up your phone and go through the photos. Is your baby always looking one way? That's a really good way to tell. So you're not necessarily diagnosing that they have a head turn preference. You're giving mom the tools to go, oh yeah, I remember when Dr. Emily said that's a good indicator that they might have a head turn preference, and there's something we can do about it. And so I think that's where that line comes in, where there are some moms who are like, I'm so glad it's not sugar coated. I've had many moms text me and be like, I love that the provider is so direct. I really appreciate that they're not beating around the bush, but not every mom is that way. And so there are times where like it results in tears, and it's a terrible, as a experienced provider, I'm like, that is not ideally what I'm going for. And
that's not the goal.
It's not the goal. But I think the tricky part is, and I imagine I'm not in your shoes, and you can probably speak to this, is you also feel a responsibility that they have information when you see that there is something. Because as a mom, like I think about this where, it is a fine line. Like my older two arguably had tongue ties that went unnoticed. And my third, luckily, because I had access to providers and information and I knew something was off, and somebody trusted my gut and said, yeah, let's look into that. Turns out that's what it was. Where historically I had been a little bit gaslit about it, where it was like, nope, not a problem at all. Like, looks great. And it's like, now I'm paying for it with other issues. And so I wish someone would have given it to me straight. Yeah. And so, but it's really hard. I mean, hindsight is so different than being in it. And I think, in this season, moms are already feeling so vulnerable. Again, they're feeling like it's my fault.
Totally.
And I just heard this. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, actually, we were just talking about this in our dad's class where the topic of infant development and tummy time came up, and one of the moms is just beating themselves up that they're worried about their baby not hitting milestones and that it's their fault because the baby's with them all day. And it's like, and it was so nice to actually hear the other dads go like, nope, we've all been in PT, like every single one of us. It's not just you. Like, it's really common. And also, like, it doesn't mean something's bad or wrong for your baby to need PT. It just means like, hey, we're just kind of helping get them to where they need to go, because they might have tension. They might have been in the womb a certain way. It's like, it's not something anybody did wrong. It's just helping their bodies get rewired and repositioned to thrive.
Yeah. I recently worked with a baby who probably wasn't getting fed enough and also had just this baseline of low muscle tone, which I always tell parents, this is actually, I think, very validating to parents, that this is the hardest thing for my students to explain, muscle tone. And so when they hear me say, oh, like students can't explain it, so when I'm trying to explain it and they're trying to understand it, it allows them to sort of step back and be like, okay, this is a concept that's challenging to understand. But no matter how many ways I said it, this mom was like, so did I like not eat enough protein when I was pregnant? She just wanted so badly to point to herself. And I was like, unfortunately, it's nobody's fault.
Yeah.
It'd
be easier if it was, right? I think that's,
yeah. And like, it could have happened that, there was something with the way that he was born and one little shift, it's just, it's so impossible to know why your baby has low tone. And the only thing that we'll do is strengthen around it. And that's not going to change how we treat him. It's just good information to have because it's likely that he'll be a little bit more delayed in his milestones and need some support. That doesn't mean he's not going to run and throw a ball, Yeah. It just means that he might get a little frustrated and need a little bit more support to reach those milestones. And I think I don't know if you agree with this, but I think maybe there's a sense of pride. If your baby needs physical therapy, it seems like, oh, my baby's not strong and tough.
Yeah, or there's something wrong. And I think that's it's not actually like wrong in the clinical sense, but it's kind of like, oh no, it's the same way that if we look at humans holistically as a person, you're not going to treat every single adult the same because our bodies are so nuanced. And so all you're doing is identifying what is the context for this baby and how do we make sure that we're pivoting to help this baby get to where they need to go. And that's really more what it is, rather than like, here are all the reasons that your baby is struggling. Like, I think even with moms positioning it that way to say, okay, this is your baby's context, like blah, it's X, Y, and Z. And so because of that, let's do these things that will help them get strong, instead of focusing on what they might struggle to do, or even that they might be delayed or whatever. I think that's the time where you hear, oh, like my baby's never going to do good things in the world because they're going to be delayed with their milestones. Like that's immediately what we go to.
Immediately. Well, let's talk about some of the beautiful things that you see. So what do you notice about the moms in your space that clinicians may not actually get to see? Because some of the sessions, there are no experts. Isn't that right?
Yep. Yeah. So it kind of depends on the series, but yeah, we usually have at least 2, maybe even 3 instructor-led classes on things like infant parent attachment, returning to work versus staying home, and kind of like what childcare is out there. I think my favorite piece that is it's not something that is like outwardly we're saying necessarily this is why you're coming, but the most beautiful thing I've seen is twofold. The first one is when every mom on the first day of class is so anxious about coming. They're worried about maybe they're driving in the car for the first time themselves. Maybe their partner is dropping them off and hanging out at the coffee shop across the street because they're so anxious about leaving the house and forgetting anything. And because our space is so thoughtfully designed for a way to practice being out with your baby, you can nurse in public if you want to. We have feeding pillows. We have a way to change your baby on the floor, because as moms of 3, we know you're going to have to change your baby on the floor at some point somewhere in the bathroom where they don't have a changing table. Totally. That could be a whole podcast too.
I'm shocked by the number of spaces here that do not have any changing table in the bathroom.
I agree. I know, we talked about this in class and a mom was like, I wrote a review, everyone pile on the review. It was just like hilarious. But so watching that change over time. So we had an infant series start recently, which is for the 3 to 6 month babies. And all the moms that were in infant had been in newborn. And they were reflecting on their first day of class. They were like, man, do you remember when we came here the first day? Like, we were so nervous. We brought everything in our house. And now, like, I just got in the car and came here and like, I didn't even really think about it. And like, that's the hidden gift that they don't realize is intentional. We are actually intentionally trying to do that because it's so easy to get sucked in and never leave your house because you are just petrified of like forgetting something. Because again, as moms, I think especially, we feel like we're wrong or bad because we forgot a change of clothes. And I'll tell you, like, every mom, even me, has had a situation where I either didn't have the right size and I had to put my baby naked in the car seat because they had a blowout. Like, we've all been there. And so I think just the freedom to pursue life outside your house in a way that's really safe kind of eases that transition. And a lot of times they'll go together as a group after class, before class, sometime during the week to a coffee shop or go get lunch. And again, they're practicing being together in a space that feels safe. The other hidden benefit that I've seen over time now, because we've been open long enough that we've seen babies who were newborns and then have gotten almost all the way to age 1, is we really teach from the beginning, and especially even starting in the tummy time classes, around giving your baby space to explore. And I've really been thinking about this a lot and seeing the manifestation of this in moms is they're just so much more at ease. Yes. And I think part of it is in Rising Toddler, which is more of a play-based class because the babies are 6 to 12 months and they're like moving and grooving and climbing all over each other. And it's 75 minutes, no experts. The instructor is the expert and we talk on different topics. And in that one, we say early on, like, your babies are going to be climbing all over each other. They are going to be like bopping each other on the head. They're going to fall off of this thing and then this soft thing in the middle. And like, it's going to be okay. This is part of them figuring out, okay, this is my body. Where does my body end? What's this other thing? Like, they're not maliciously pulling each other's hair, or like, you don't have a bully. Like, your baby is not a bully. They're just exploring their environment. And we don't want to place toys in their hands. This is what we talk about in tummy time and infant development. Like, trying to gauge their interest and then pulling them into showing us what they're interested in. And I feel like that carries into how they show up as moms, where they're less likely to jump in and hover. And because ultimately, like, children need autonomy to feel confident, to thrive, to get through and to be resilient.
And as a physical therapist, I'm like delighted that there's this space where babies can just move around and explore their bodies and be sort of almost encouraged to climb all over each other. I think, seeing that it's so valuable, and it's so valuable for parents to feel like there's this modeling of, you don't have to intervene every time your baby goes after another baby. Or like, my favorite is when they take the other baby by the head and just suck on their head. I love it.
Yep.
The best.
Yep.
Because they're like, what's this round thing? That's fascinating. I wonder what it tastes like.
I wonder what everything tastes like. I'm going to put all these things in my mouth. Yeah.
And I think there's this almost like permission to sit and observe. And I try to talk about that a lot with the 3-month-old cohort, because it's easy to feel like you know, TikTok is telling you that you have to engage your baby in all these different ways. What if their own brain development was engaging enough for them? And what we did was set up an environment for them that allowed them to explore with their eyes and explore with their bodies. And by doing so, we are just allowing their normal motor skills to occur. And it's almost like we're just getting out of the way, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's tough. Like I remember it's been so interesting having 3 kids, because I feel like it's been such a gift in so many ways that I look at what I know now and like what I wish I would have known back then. And and just being armed with like knowledge about things like that. And I feel like my first was because I had a lot of spit up acid reflux babies. They were always in the bouncer, because it was like, okay, we have to put them in there for 30 minutes or hold them upright. And it's like, you can only do so much if you're like constantly, you're basically like feeding and burping your baby 24/7 when you have a baby who has acid reflux. Or like, you know, all the different challenges, where I feel like with my third, because I had expertise, I did early intervention, and I learned about the value of giving her space. Like, she just needs to be on the ground. That like, that's the default, was mind blowing to me, and actually took a lot of pressure off, because I do think we get all this stuff of like, do this with your baby, and you need to make sure that you're doing, you know, setting all these things up and all these activities, and they take so much time, and they make play with it for like 2 seconds, and then you're like, why did I waste my time doing that? And it's like, actually the thing that's really interesting to them is measuring cups. Just put them on the ground, like that's all they want. And like, even, I mean, we talk about this a lot, you and I, but around like, with my third, we just literally brought a pop-up tent everywhere we went. Like, sorry to all my friends who had us over for parties and we're like, there's the baby, like popping her up in the tent, because she loved to be on the ground. And even as a 1-year-old now, she is like running all over. She's trying to figure out how to jump. She's our most capable gross motor baby. Like, she is, you know, and even just small things, like we used to hold the fingers and walk around with our babies, because that's just what we like, generationally what we did. And so even now I'm telling moms that, and they're like, what? And I'm like, trust me, it's like the greatest gift ever, because it's my least favorite phase of parenting is the like, okay, you want to walk everywhere, but you need me to do it. And with Luna, we didn't do that. And we were like, okay, how do we get her environment set up in a way where she's having to figure out how to do that? And now it's like the fact that she can do deep squats in the middle of the room by herself, stand back up, run, do all the things. Like, it's incredible to see the difference, where I still feel like my first is still like working through coordination. So it's just really, I feel like there's so many things that it's kind of, again, I'm like, man, what would I go back and what would I go back and tell myself? So
I know. And honestly, I use you as an example all the time, because I think people they don't want to take up too much space. So they just bring their baby in the car seat and leave their baby in the car seat when they're at the restaurant. And I'm like, put a blanket on the table and put your baby on the table, or be like Liberty and bring a little pop-up tent everywhere you go. And then your baby will not have frustration in their gross motor skills. They will have independence.
And they'll actually enjoy being out longer. So we had this actually in our infant class, where a mom was saying, yeah, like we used to take her everywhere. She was totally happy. And then all of a sudden now she's just like pissed to go out. And I said, well, it's because she's moving. She doesn't want to be in a chair. She doesn't want to be like, have you tried putting down a mat? Like, so the next time they went out, they brought a mat similar to what we were doing at a brewery. They're like, she lasted for like hours. I'm like, I know.
And then people walking by are like, oh my gosh, look at that baby. And this is how we change society, because I think people aren't used to seeing babies out in the world. And when we see babies out in the world on the floor, you think, oh, am I allowed to do that? And then you think, maybe I'll give it a try. And it just will become part of the way that things are done. And I think, like, if there is one thing that I could do, it's to remind people that the cheapest baby toy that you have is the floor.
Yes, yes. And they're interested in it for so long, like way longer than you think, because there's, and even just, I think like you were saying, that to make it part of the norm also means, and I think this goes back to I'm always optimizing everything. And so I'm like, okay, in order for this habit to actually stick, we need to make it as easy as possible. And so for me, that was having mats around the house with like little buckets of, a toy or two. And so I'm taking a shower and I'm putting her on the ground. I'm washing my face. I'm putting her on the ground. That the default in any situation where my hands need to be doing something else is that she's on the ground.
Yes.
So in the kitchen. And I think that if you don't make it easy, you're not going to do it, because you're like, okay, I need to set the baby, you're not going to think, oh, I need to set the baby down. If you get into the room and you see the mat, you're going to go, oh, I can set the baby down in here.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
If your baby ever needs a pacifier, and not all babies do, the one that I would want in your world is the Ninny. It's the only pacifier designed to actually mimic the shape and function of the breast. It looks like this. It's very soft here, like an areola, and then harder, like a nipple. And this shape means that it supports healthy oral development instead of interfering with it. I really love it because babies don't just passively hold it in their mouth like the ones with a bulb on the end. They have to actively suck. It's hard work. It's my workout pacifier. And that matters for feeding, for regulation, and for long-term oral function. It's especially beautiful for breastfed babies who need a little extra soothing without confusion. If you're listening and you're pregnant, postpartum, or buying for someone you love, you can grab a Ninny through the link in the show notes or use the code BeWellBaby for 10% off at checkout. Is there anything about new motherhood? I mean, I guess this conversation is probably one of those things, but is there anything else about new motherhood that you have completely changed your mind on since starting New Mom School?
Yes. I feel like the idea of the right way is something that really has shifted a lot in me. I am an achiever myself. As you, I know. Who knew? Who opens a business while also having a baby? That would be me. Who went to grad school, worked full time while planning a wedding? Me. I just can't operate in any other facet. I always felt this pressure to that, even knowing there are different ways that people do it. And for a lot of things, like sleep is something we did very different than both of our families. And so we felt a lot of judgment around that. And that was really hard because you don't realize before you have the baby, because there's so much excitement coming, that you sometimes don't realize how much tension is going to show up in relationships around different choices. Yeah. And that the excitement of the baby may not be shared. You're really excited and you're like, why aren't they as excited as we are? This is the most incredible human being on the planet. And we're designed to believe that about our babies. Right. But I think this idea that I'm more in control of my baby is such BS. There's very little that I am doing to shape this human. There are a lot of things obviously that we can do in terms of development and giving them the space and things like that. But this baby,
it's the environment though. Yeah. It's not they are born with their little personalities.
Yeah. And that's the gift of having so many is I so vividly remember in the hospital with our second Atlas, and I looked at Max and was like, this baby is so different. Already it's she just 0 to 100, screamed her lungs off immediately. And then would get, as soon as you gave her something, she's super chill. And that was the first time where I was like, oh, Nova is not who she is because of something I did or didn't do. Yeah. It's who she is. And I think that is you start, because I think especially as an achiever, and I was actually just talking about this at On Running, where it's you really do, you have your 10,000 hours and your mastery in this profession that you have most likely. And then basically you're an intern at being a mom. Yeah. And you're not used to being an intern at anything. And so you're I don't know what I'm doing. I biologically I'm supposed to know what I'm doing, but that's why feeding can feel so defeating, because you're I have this and like I should just be able to feed him. And like that, you know, so many of our moms or mother-in-laws or aunts or uncles or grandmothers are like, it was just so easy, you just put him on. And it's like, I don't think it was for you, but maybe you don't remember. Maybe it was. I don't know.
Maybe it was. I think something that's missing from the conversation too is that we used to live more in community, and we used to see our cousins and aunties breastfeeding all the time. We would see people give birth all the time. And I say this every day, I feel like, in Beyond Birth, but you can't instinctively know how to do something that you've never seen and you've never practiced. It's not an instinct, because your body has never done it before. So you can't move into the perfect birthing position if you've never done it before. That's why we move in Beyond Birth. You can't breastfeed your baby with the perfect latch and the perfect cervical extension if you've never seen a baby actually latch before.
Especially as a newborn. Like, you imagine when you think of feeding your baby, you think of feeding like a 6-month-old.
Right.
And like, that's not what you're dealing with.
It's so different. And it can be instinctive, right? Babies have reflexes that they're supposed to be able to go through, but every birth is so different, and every baby's ability to move their body through these reflexes is different. So having to do this on your own without anyone around it's impossible. Yeah. So what you're doing by like bringing all of these people together who have fresh babies, who are learning this stuff together, that's rebuilding the village. That's rebuilding the community. And I think that is what's going to help shape and change the way that we care for babies, which is my mission. So,
yeah. And also just even this idea, like, so many times I have moms in class that are, you know, stressed about their relationship, and they're like, we don't have any time together and we don't have any family nearby. And so many moms that are in new mom school, like, are new to the area, don't have any family, don't have community. We had an instance that was like so beautiful where a mom got married like right after class one day at City Hall, and like all the moms went and supported her. And like, it was just like, that's what we're giving people, is like this ability to have other people that you can rely on. And one of the pieces of advice that I've been giving lately, and I gave it to the dads too, is use your village. So figure out how to have date nights. Like, you guys know each other's babies and your babies are the same age. Like, trust that you could care for each other's babies and say, okay, I'm going to come over. I did this with my neighbor and it was amazing. Like, I'm going to come over after bedtime. You guys go on a date. I'll just hang out at your house, watch some TV, eat your snacks. And if something happens with your baby, like, I'll take care of it. I know how to, like, I'm in the exact same phase as you. I can give them a bottle or, you know, shush them back to sleep. And then you switch off, and like, it doesn't cost you anything. And actually, as a parent, I love it, because I'm like, I get a break from at my own house where I don't have any laundry to do, or like a laundry list of things I need to do. And so I think just even like opening up the gates to that permission of like being a village, because I think actually sometimes one of the things I'm trying to work on more in class of conveying is showing up to class doesn't mean you get a village. And I think I wish it did, but it takes work and intention. It means showing up for each other. It means making time outside of class to get together. It means checking in and seeing how things are going to go in between the weeks. And I've seen it in cohorts where they're like thick as thieves, going to be best friends forever. And sometimes where they don't click as much, and like that happens. But I think a lot of it is about how much you put into it, just like any relationship. And so I think it's also a good reminder, and I think this was going wild on TikTok, but it was like, be the village you want. And I think like we forget, I think the pandemic ruined us all, but it's like, you have to put in the work to build friendships still. Totally. You can't solve it with a product.
Yeah. And I think it's almost, I talk about this a lot in terms of building any kind of relationship. It takes boring time. Like, it takes banking time with someone and being there just as the person who happens to be there when they get a phone call, or as the person who is on the walk with you the day after you had a fight with your partner. And like, it just has to be, you have to be around.
And I think the nice thing too is because a lot of them are in these early stages, and they're, you know, a lot of them are on maternity leave. And so there are some groups where they've just been like, let's just all get together at someone's house and hang out. Like, I'm hanging out alone at home. Might as well hang out with my friends. And so a lot of them, especially when it was nicer out, they're just like, let's put blankets down in the backyard. And I have so many pictures of babies doing that with their moms.
Yeah.
And like, those are the moments where it's like, you kind of, being the village means getting in the gritty day-to-day stuff of like, you know, it might not seem like a super high or a super low. And I think even in class, the fact that we do a lot of highs and lows really helps, because it's sort of like, we only saw you a week ago. And so it's not necessarily like, this is the most earth shattering thing ever, but it's really impacting me this week. Or like, I'm really struggling with this conversation I had with my mother-in-law, you know, and I think it's like the space to talk about it. And also the relief when you see this, lots of head nodding of like, oh yeah, no, me too. And then I'll say like, do you see like everyone's nodding their head? You know, it's really cool.
Yeah. And I think that when you're in a room with people who are not doing the same thing as you, but you're all friends, I think there's this moment of realizing that there truly is no right way. And you can love each other even if you're doing everything really differently.
Yep.
Even if you're sleep training and you're co-sleeping, you know?
Yep.
And I love the responsibility being put back on people. And, you know, maternity leave or parental leave, paternity leave is so valuable. And I think it gets wasted sometimes. But I love that you're sort of putting that responsibility of like, you have to build the village yourself. Like, we're a starting point.
Yeah.
And if you want this, it's up to you to build it.
Yeah, you need to walk into it like we're the starting ignition fire, and then you have to decide to continue putting the wood in. Yeah.
I have a group of moms from our support group who has stayed friends through second babies and they're just sort of friends for life, you know? And it's so valuable to have people who knew you when you were postpartum, because it is the most challenging and vulnerable time in many people's lives.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing about that too is we often at New Mom School talk about how birth is the great equalizer, because I will tell you that I have moms who reach out all the time about they're worried about being like too old or too whatever. And I will tell you, you have no idea how old anybody is. There is it doesn't matter. Like, the context doesn't, that as much as you might think it would, it never comes up because it's not actually relevant. What's relevant is you're all in the exact same season, regardless of your age.
I always look at people who are younger than me, but who have kids who are older than me. I look up to them because, man, parenting is so hard. You've done it for 4 more years than I have.
Yeah.
How is that possible?
I know. It is crazy how, I don't know if you feel this way, but I so regularly have moms who are like, do you have New Mom School for empty nesters? Do you have New Mom School for middle schoolers? And I'm like, it just makes me realize, and I think this is something too that I wish I would have known going back, is every stage of parenting, you're starting new. Like, your children evolve. Like, there's so many times where we hear it in the newborn class where you're like, I just started figuring it out, and then like my baby changed their mind. They completely changed. And now they're doing everything different. And I want to be like, that's gonna happen forever. Forever and ever. And it can be like painstaking, because you're like, especially when you like being an expert of something, or you like to like master something, and you're just like, I always feel out of my depth forever.
Something that my husband said when, you know, our oldest was probably 6 months old, and I said something along the lines of, I can't imagine that she's going to talk to us and walk around and have a personality that, you know, that she might have attitude or like slam the door, you know? Yeah. And she's doing that now.
Yeah. Yep.
But what he said was, I think of her now as being a different person than her at age 3 or at age 14, a completely different person. And I really take that with me, and that you are getting to know a new person, and you're getting to know yourself as a parent differently every single stage of your baby's development, every single stage of your child's life.
Yeah.
It's a lot of responsibility, like I said.
Well, and I think even when you have multiple kids too, you often, like, there's always this, worry or fear when you have another baby. Like, am I going to be able to love this baby as much? How am I, I've known this toddler or this older child for all these years. And then now here's this like little dumpling that they've been in my body, but like, I don't know them. And so, now I'm like the sole provider of this one. And now my partner is dealing with that one and they don't really, and it's like, it's actually why actually I love We Have a Second Time Mom class, because I feel like it's a really different season where you're like, okay, you get to being in that stage and you're like, oh, the newborn's fine, but my toddler isn't sleeping. So like, can you help me with that? Or how do I make a safe space now that I have a toddler who likes to body slam my newborn? Like, what do you, like, how do you navigate that? And it's a very different thing. And I think about how, like, I saw this video that was it just really put things into perspective for me. That was like, yes, your baby is getting a different version of you, but it's a different version and it's beautiful in its own way. So like, I may not have as much one-on-one focus on Luna, but like, I am so much more confident. I'm so much more relaxed as a mom. She's getting a completely different mom than Nova had. And as like, I'm one of 6 kids. And I remember as a kid feeling like my siblings would describe my mom and I'd be like, I don't even know that person. Like, I don't know who you're describing. That is such a different experience. Like, I was raised by a completely different mom. Yeah. And I think it was easy to feel, I don't know, like, I think there was a lot of jealousy around that sometimes, because it was like, oh, well, you're the baby, my brother and I are the youngest. We have siblings that are well into their 50s. But I also am like, oh, I can see now, it's not like, it's just that she was evolving as a woman and as a mom. And it's not because she loved us more or less. And also, like, she had so much more perspective. So she cared less about the things that didn't matter as much because she knew what those things were. And so I think it's like, she
wouldn't have been able to do that if she hadn't learned with the first few kids.
No. And as much as you want to channel, like Max and I with our first, we would be like, okay, in this decision, like, if this was our third child, like, how do we show up in third child energy right now instead? And like, we would try sometimes to be like, okay, but it's impossible because you're in first child energy. So,
and you've never done it before with your first child, and it gives you a completely different relationship, but it's no better or worse.
No,
I think that's really, I mean, I love the Second Time Mom class, and I really felt that as a second and third time mom, just that, like, oh yeah, baby, totally easy. Got that down. But also, it's what I do. So that's a little different. But, but I also felt like, once you've done it once, you can figure it out again. And maybe your second baby has a completely different personality, but you already understand the mechanics and you can kind of meet that baby. And, you have to be a different parent for each of your kids based on their personality already. So you're just always evolving. That's what's so beautiful about parenthood, I think. That, like, you are always working on yourself, because if you aren't, then you can't keep up with the demands of parenthood and the challenges on your nervous system of being a parent.
It's so true. And my mother-in-law says the most beautiful thing, which is, you can't teach what you don't know. And she is someone who I respect so much, who is constantly working on herself and being like, okay, how do I work on this? How do I become a more peaceful, more in tune version of myself? How do I tap back into my intuition? And I feel like it's such a gift that we can give our children to be continuing to evolve. And I think that's actually, I'm so curious to see, my husband Max and I talk about this all the time, like what it's going to be like this generation of dads, this generation of parents that are really looking at parenting in like such a different way. I'm sure there's going to be, there's always, like, kids are going to always need therapy. Like, I say that all the time. Like, nothing that I do is going to be like them needing therapy isn't a sign that I did something bad as a parent.
Totally. It's maybe more of a sign that you're paying attention.
Yes, exactly. But we were just talking about how it's so easy as we had kids later in life. So for us, like, we had so much identity before we had children. And we were just talking this morning about, like, what is just kind of in this new shift around what is my purpose? Like, what is the meaning of life? And he was at something with his school that he went to recently, and he's like, actually, I think the meaning of life is pretty straightforward. And everyone was like, tell us more, oh wise one. And he's like, it's about evolving as a society and having children. And he's like, and I feel like that's really started to sink in with him, where I think there's, you know, there's this feeling of like, oh, if we are focused too much on our kids, then like our careers will suffer and we can't evolve. And he's like, the greatest thing I can do, like my startup is my children right now. Yeah. And like, I feel, yeah. And I think just like that intention of like, this is an important job, not like, oh, like it'll just happen. And like, we actually can be intentional. We can help them rewire their nervous systems because we're rewiring our own nervous systems. We can learn how to clean it up when we make mistakes. Like,
we can repair, we can apologize.
Yes, I do it all the time. And I'm like, it's really good practice. And actually we talk about this a lot where I'm like, even if your baby can't speak, you can still practice repairing. You can practice giving your baby autonomy. Like, it's crazy to me how early, if you show a baby 2 pairs of socks, how they will grab for one.
Yep.
And like, I think we underestimate their desire for that as well.
Agreed.
But yeah, I just think like that's, it is such a beautiful mission that we have as humans to, and not everybody is designed, like not everybody's designed to want to have kids. And I also think that's important too.
Yeah. Like, what would we do if we didn't have those support people in our lives who didn't have kids?
Yeah, I know. And I'm like,
we need them to,
yeah.
I love the concept of allo parenting, where like, it shouldn't just be you and your partner raising a child. It should be you and your partner and your best friend and their sister. And, you know, having your baby feel safe with other adults is so important for their feeling of safety in the world. So yeah, I just think that's such an important piece of the puzzle that, you know, but the responsibility, like we are raising the next generation. It's huge. It's huge.
It is a big responsibility. And I think the benefit of we're in a mindset shift, or we're starting to get there, where we actually shouldn't be doing it alone. It's not a mark of honor to say I'm suffering in silence and look at how much I can carry. And I think even we talk about this in the returning to work or staying home class, where so many moms feel guilt about somebody else participating in helping care for their child. And that it's this feeling of like, the baby's going to love them more than me. It's like, what if I'm not spending enough time with my baby? And I think, I saw something recently that was like, even the involvement of aunts, like babies get their sense of safety from their mom, but they get their sense of confidence and self-expression from aunties. And like that really impacted me, because I've been an aunt since I was 10. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can see that like my relationship with my nephew, who's now an adult, who's married, like has deeply shaped who he is, because he had another person who deeply loved him, who showed up for him unconditionally. I would never come close to replacing his mom. I wasn't designed to replace his mom. And like, I love it when I have a nanny who loves my children. Like there's nothing better, because I'm like, these children are not only getting the message that they're loved and valued from their parents, but they're getting it from other people around them. And I think that like really adds to that overall sense of worthiness and belonging.
Yeah. And it helps to, even just to hear this conversation, I think will help someone who's like, oh, I'm going back to work, my baby has to have a nanny, feel the sense of like, what a gift that I can have this opportunity to go back to work, and my baby will be with someone who is safe and who eventually grows to love them. Amazing.
Yeah.
So Liberty, how do people get this village?
Yes.
How do they sign up for New Mom School? Let's tell them.
Yes. Okay. So there's a lot of ways. So we have a ton of locations actually around the US. We're like 30 and counting. I think slated to be maybe up even to 50, but we're in tons of states. So we're in like Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Missouri, Nevada, New Jersey, North Carolina, Oregon, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas. I feel like I'm going through like the state song from when I was in 5th grade. And so you can go to newmomschool.com. You can search the different locations, particularly for the one in Oregon. We're in Lake Oswego, right off the freeway, which means we get moms from all over. We get moms from Vancouver, Camas, Happy Valley, Newburgh, Aloha, Bethany, and then of course, obviously also around us. So you can sign up there. And then the best thing to do if you're currently pregnant is to register when pregnant, because we actually create your cohort based on your due date. And so what'll happen is by doing that, you lock in a spot because our newborn classes are very popular. And we then will shape the group to get you as close as possible for birth dates with the other moms that are due at the same time. And if baby comes early or late, or you're just not ready and you want to start in the next one, it gives you the freedom to do that because you're already in the system. And shameless plug, if you're a provider and you would like to have a way to or like in your local to Portland or any of the other states we mentioned, we can connect you with whoever, but we would be happy to give you brochures or cards to give out to parents. I think that's been really helpful, is like having an avenue, because providers really do desire helping give more information and more resources to parents. Knowing that there is a safe and trusted place that they can send people has been really helpful. So if you want any pamphlets or anything to give to your clients and patients, let me know.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think so many providers want to know, what supports can I provide to my clients. So this is an amazing resource.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I know I love chatting with you.
This was so wonderful. What a great conversation. And I'm like delighted with how it morphed.
I know.
If New Mom School sounds like exactly what you or someone you love needs, head to newmomschool.com to find a location close to you and register for a class, especially if you're pregnant. Do it now so that you can lock in your spot with a cohort that matches your due date. And then you and your babies can grow together. It is one of the sweetest ways to build a village. Remember, if you're local, use the code BeWell50 for $50 off at checkout for Lake Oswego New Mom School. And if this episode resonated with you, please share it. That's how we rebuild the village, one conversation at a time. I'll see you next week. Audio and music production by the amazing Peter Gary, with Lillian Ewert managing all scheduling and operations of Be Well Baby, including this podcast. Thank you both for making this happen. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and I'd love for you to follow us on Instagram at BeWellBabyPDX or visit BeWellBaby.org to book a time to chat with us. And if this episode helped you, please send it to someone who's pregnant, postpartum, or someone in your life who wants to support you better. No one should have to do this alone. Welcome to Be Well Baby. You're in the right place.